Hey, Silver Creek, this is Pastor Zach. Without having services, I wanted to try and give an opportunity to communicate with everybody through this video and also probably put an email together as well in case you want to read it. Obviously, we are not having services. With everything going on with coronavirus, it seemed wise last Saturday to not have services for now. And so we're not going to do that. One of the things, though, I want to let you know is that when we get back together is that we're going to actually have the teens and young kids, whatever, young or older kids, I guess, tweeners, help collect offerings. So that way they can be more involved in participating in the church. So that'll be kind of fun. Another thing I want to let you know is we're actually going to put together, I'm going to type up a basic letter, send it out to all the folks in Silver Creek so they know, hey, we're praying for them. So please pray for everybody in the neighborhood. Secondly, is that if you need transportation or medical or anything like that, and we can help out, food, whatever, we can try to help out with that. So trying to make us available as a congregation for those that can get out and do that. Okay, I did also just get notification in an email from Jonathan Parker with Love Inc. Big Woods that they're providing emergency food, medical transportation, prescription delivery transportation, all that kind of stuff as well on a limited basis. So between what we can do as a congregation, which actually somebody this morning actually called one of the elders, got some help with the family being able to deliver food for them. So that's cool. Thank you guys. And so we've got Love Inc. there also as a resource to tap. So we can help out the community with ourselves and also for other people and through Big Woods. Cool. Another thing is that with relational safety, as far as a congregation, what we're going to do is have everybody, and this was decided at Classis or Consistory this past Monday, is that have everybody who serves in the church in some fashion, even nursery folks, have a background check every other year. And of course, church will pay for that, but it gets an opportunity to make sure that we have as safe as possible environment for who's coming in the door. So that'll be for some of the stuff for when we get back together. Until then, I'm going to be trying to post some more devotionals and notes like this one on Facebook and more about the website in a minute. One thing I did want to let you know is when we had the breakfast here a while back with the Vision 2020, at least that's how it was advertised, is that it came to my attention that a lot of folks were unhappy about what we did or did not talk about, just depended on where we were at. And that was my fault. Not the best communication when it was discussed initially on setup, and then execution came off not the best as well. So I'm going to let you know I'm aware of that. We are going to have another meeting at some point in the future to discuss that when we can get back together. But also, in a sense, that meeting may not be necessary, and let me explain why. Well, we're going to have a meeting regardless so folks can talk, but this information I want to give you might actually be very helpful. And that is when we all got together at Classis, it was discussed the fact that really the Vision 2020 discussion that's coming up in June is not to state a position on human sexuality, as far as we know right now. What it's really deciding to do is how and when, where, and what if there's going to be a split in the RCA, what that would look like. And a lot of people have even told me, and I thought initially, well, why are we talking about how to split when we don't yet even know the issue of what we're standing for? Well, there's a couple things. Number one is that the past statement papers that have been put out by the RCA have been supporting a very traditional view of marriage. So that is a good point, but the thing is there's not been the legal restrictions to hold everyone to that perspective. Therefore, the decision is to try and figure out how the RCA is going to split this June, at least that's what the plan is, because then if you decide now how you're going to split, then we know it's going to be fair. Because if the majority is one way and you decide, or if the opinions are held this way, where it's, let's say it's a high traditional view of marriage and not many folks holding a contemporary view, then it may not be as fair, especially like if it was the other way as well, a lot of contemporary and not many traditional, then the decision of how to split may be lopsided. For instance, they may say, well, now that we're in control, then we're not going to give you guys any opportunity to take the church property or anything else with you. It all belongs to the RCA. And if you were on the higher side, I guess, with more people, well, then you'd be happy with that. But if you're on the lower side, you'd be very unhappy with that. So I don't know if that's the world's best explanation, but basically they're trying to decide how are we going to split. let's make it fair so that whether you're in the majority or the minority, then you still feel it's fair. That's probably the better way of saying it. So with that in mind, when Patty and I went to Classis last Thursday, really cool, interesting discussion. I'll spare you the long details, but the summary is during discussion, somebody, when it first got started, it was still pretty quiet. And somebody piped up and said, you know what, hey, let's do this, straw poll. If you would not perform a same-sex marriage or union, whatever you want to call it, at your church, raise your hand. Every hand in the place went up except one. And that person actually is presently serving at an ELCA church. So therefore, they don't have that concern because they do, in fact, perform same-sex marriages at the in the ELCA denomination. So everybody in the room except one said, nope, we wouldn't do that. Now, there was a little bit of discussion about one church in the city that was saying, well, but we want to be more open. We can't really necessarily call it sin. They were kind of equivocating, but everybody else in the room was like, no, that's wrong. That's not how we're going to do it. So that being said, I just realized that bookcase is sticking out of my head, so I'm going to slide over here. But the point is that initially the discussion relaxed a lot whenever folks realized, hey, we are not going to, as a Classis, not going to support the idea of same-sex marriage and unions. Okay, something that the Consistory voted on a month ago and then approved it this past Monday, so it's all good, is what we're calling a marriage and church use policy. And this is put together, actually we got it from another church, but the elders are in full agreement with it. And what it says is, no ceremony of any kind affirming, celebrating, or consecrating a union of same-sex partners or participants will be performed by the pastor or allowed on church property. This amendment in no way relieves the membership of the command of Christ to extend sacrificial love to all people, but is given in accordance with the scriptural order and doctrine of creation as established in Genesis 2:24 and affirmed in the Gospels of the New Testament by Jesus Christ, and Mark 10:6-9, the marriage is between one man and one woman. So that's the church use policy that actually was put together and adopted and approved. The next step with that is, since it's on the books officially by Consistory, is that we plan on bringing this up for a full vote for the congregation this fall, and then next spring bring it back to Classis for having it added to our bylaws, so that it's very much a big part of a statement. It's a solid foundation, really, of understanding marriage is between one man and one woman, and make it kind of difficult to change all that in case somebody wanted to in the future. The other thing, too, is that Classis, and there was some discussion of this at the meeting when Ben Shoup was here, about whether or not they were going to allow for a 51% vote or a 2/3 vote. And initially, when I went to Classis, I was thinking, well, let's do a 51%, because if there's this 60-40 split in the RCA, well, then we can go ahead and settle this thing for once instead of having to keep dragging it on. Because a lot of denominations, I think the Methodist one lately, is that the Contemporary View of Marriage group has continued to say, no, we're not going to vote on it yet, we're not going to vote on it yet, and allowing culture and peer pressure and everything else to continue to push more and more folks in a contemporary view of marriage and away from a traditional view. So it's basically a war of attrition by just waiting longer. So that's where my thought was, hey, let's get it done now so it's clear, you don't have to worry about it in the denomination. Well, somebody brought up a very good point, and that is a lot of times, even in our House and Senate, U.S. House and Senate, is that when they have a low threshold, like I guess they did it here a while back with appointing judges, and they did it when Democrats were in power, they wanted to have a low threshold so they could get their judges in, and then they flipped it, so now Republicans are in power, and the Democrats were screaming bloody murder about being able to put in more judges from a Republican perspective, and they didn't like how that was now at 51%. So the Democrats now, I guess, under Trump would have liked it to go back to 2/3 ratio of voting instead of 51%. So anyway, I'm not trying to pick politics. I'm just using it as an example. And that is that if the RCA decided to go with 51% for any and all votes of policy and whatever about the Vision 2020, then it allows for somebody to pull out an amendment and throw one in and get stuff crazy going on there. So they just decided at Classis that at least we as a Classis we're going to say, nope, let's go ahead and do the 2/3 ratio and call it. A couple things about money, because it is something that goes around. First of all, if you need help, holler. Secondly, the Classis decided, because there are a number of, I guess there was a church that closed before I got here, I don't know, somewhere. They sold that property. The Minnesota Classis actually has a little over, or at least maybe right now with the market, a little under $1 million in the bank. And so what they decided to do was give basically every church sometime this year a $10,000 gift. Here it is, kind of a refund, if you will, from payment of assessments and stuff in the past. So the question becomes then, what are we going to do with that? How's that going to work? So obviously in my mind, it went one of two directions. First direction was the obvious one, and that's facilities. You know, a roof, bathroom, maybe parking lot work, lighting work, fill in the walls. By that I mean the Pendaflex pull things on each side of the congregation is to fill those in with wood or whatever, drywall. Have glass along the top so it lets the light in still. But then the classrooms are more quiet, so it can separate it out. I think a while back when we had that sermon on sexuality, we had the kids in the classroom and they were making a lot of the noise. So a lot of noise over there. So anyway, to close those off, and then folks were like, well, what about overflow in case of an event? Well, that's where we've got the speakers that are back in the fellowship hall, and we could also put screens back in there if we really wanted to have overflow back in there. So that being said, that's another option. But anyway, that's all physical plant stuff. The outreach stuff that really came to mind was two things, one of which is an after-school program, because every day after school, we've got kids that come out and sit right outside the door, waiting for their parents to come pick them up when they get home from work. And then also another way simply to reach out in the community. I think even at the Vision 2020 breakfast thing, somebody mentioned, well, let's get ping pong tables in here. Let's get food, snacks, whatever, homework time. So that way we can truly reach out to kids in the community. The other thing is we've got two couples, I should say, in the church that have been willing to host or help organize and plan some special events going on in the church, picnics, ice cream socials, kickball, bouncy house, movie night, all kinds of stuff basically where they can all be a part of the congregation. So, cool idea. Then, let's see. So the question then is, okay, what are we going to do with that? Now, they decided not to disperse that money until the markets go back up, so it may be a while, sometime this year. But the point is that money is on its way. So I wanted to put that out there. Give you ideas. Yeah, we could take care of physical facility stuff, but we also, quite frankly, could do ministry stuff. And actually, with 10 grand, you could probably do a lot of that. How many of you ever buy anything on Amazon.com? I do. If you go to, instead of typing in Amazon.com, if you type in smile.amazon.com, if you're signed into Amazon, it'll still be the same account number and password and everything else there. All the business is the same. But any and all purchases you make through smile.amazon.com, for every dollar that you spend, you're going to give 1/2 of 1 cent to the charity of your choice. And guess what? You can choose Silver Creek Community Church as your charity. So I think Julie's already made a couple of purchases. I made one. So we've got a whopping 25 cents in that account at this point. But it gives us the opportunity to receive a donation from Amazon for every time that anybody purchases anything and designates that for Silver Creek Community Church. Then it does come back to the church. I think it'll be deposited into our account. Got that set up that way. Next thing, some of you may have noticed we do have a website, silvercreekcommunitychurch.net. That has sermons on it up to what we have edited so far. It has upcoming events, which for right now is nothing, but at least they're on there so you can see them. It also has name, contact information, email, and then also the last thing. The ability to make donations to the church. So I know some folks have been mailing checks to Linda. Just wanted to mention that Linda asked me if we could go ahead and have the checks mailed to her place instead of here at church. And the reason is because this mailbox is not as secure as what hers is. And if you don't want to do that, then please go ahead and donate online at the church website. Again, silvercreekcommunitychurch.net, all one word. And you can do it with credit card or PayPal. And basically, if you could, please donate. The reason is because we're still trying to keep doing what we're doing here as a church. and still have things going on. You can set it up for a monthly offering. You can do a one-time gift, you can do whatever. But the main thing is that with what we're trying to do as a congregation remotely at this point, with getting the website up, I'm also going to be making some changes to get the video camera better, because I realized for a few sermons, the audio was unplugged just a little bit, so it wasn't picking up from the microphone, it was picking up from the back of the church, which made it kind of distracting. And also going to be getting the TV in the fellowship hall set up to broadcast the announcements to that. Any critiques that you have on the website or ideas for it, please email me. A few folks already have. On email too, I'm going to be making a transition to separate out the personal email I got, my old one, and then a new one, which is sccpastor@gmail.com. That was actually the one that Luke had. He's done with it, passed it back to me. So I'm going to go ahead and leave personal on personal and set church email for church email, so I can keep those two separate. It's going to make my day go a little easier without having to look all of it at once. Church directory. We do have the information gathered from everybody over the phone, because the elders made calls to kind of see how you guys are doing right now. Do you need any help? And what's the best way to contact you? So that's in a process of being given to Michaela, so she can get the directory made up for the church. And as far as other information, like who does what, who to contact for what groups and all that, we're going to be adding that onto the website so we can change it on a regular basis. Like every year, we've got new elders and deacons, so that the printed version of the directory is only outdated when an individual, changes their voice, email, or phone number, or moves, or somebody new comes in, versus every year when we change over people involved with things. Other couple things that you might be of interest about the church for a physical plant is, one, somebody came up with the idea, a pretty good one, is that we can, instead of completely moving bathrooms and having to give up a whole classroom for a handicap bathroom, one of the ideas was to, in the men's room, move the partitions so that we can get a bigger stall for handicap access, put the new partitions in and new grab bars in. So that'll be a little bit larger. And then also in the women's restroom, instead of having 2 sinks, shrink it down to 1. So slide it, I guess, if you're facing it, to the left, and put in a larger stall to the right there. So the center one, I guess, so that can be more of a handicap accessible size as well. That prevents us from having to lose a classroom, which we used that back when the kids were out of service with the sermon on sexuality. And it also lets us use the facilities that we have, so we don't have to take a concrete saw and cut up the floor and all the other fun stuff that you do when you're putting new plumbing in. Another question or concern folks had was lighting. I guess for years it's been a concern that the stage has not been well lit and the overall sanctuary has been kind of dark. And so there's the plan of actually getting brighter light bulbs. The older ones we have in there now generate so many lumens. With the new stuff we put in, it's actually going to increase it by more than double from the pendants, so that we don't have to have the fluorescents on necessarily if we don't want them, the tubes on the side to reflect off the screens. And also getting more light fixtures and brighter bulbs up on stage, so that can be well lit as well. Design team's pretty close. I've been working with them to get the mailboxes updated. We're going to try and get, obviously, larger ones, and also the cabinetry in the fellowship hall, get all that done. So hopefully, if all things go out, the lighting and the mailboxes and cabinetry at least would be done prior to coming back in for services. Bathroom might take a little bit longer on that. But anyway, just thought I'd let you guys know. If you got anything else, give me a call, an email, let me know. And check your email, check the website, and keep praying, guys. God's definitely working through this. Every single time somebody has difficulties like this as a nation, 9/11's the last big one, is that a lot of folks come together, a lot of care and concerns expressed. A lot of folks really, too, get a recognition that they need more of God in their life. And so it can be truly a time of revival for folks' hearts. So keep praying for that, and we'll go from there. Love you guys. Been praying for you as well. Hope you have a good one. Try and rest, and check my next blog. Thanks. Bye-bye.